Welcome everyone to this month's webinar. Appreciate everyone joining today. We'll be focusing on the Project Center. It's a newer piece of functionality released within the last few years. So we'll explore how it's been updated and what some of the benefits we see. So let's jump into it. So the Project Center. This is OpenAir's attempt to kind of merge project structure and bookings, which has been kind of a request for a long time from us that have been working with the tool for many years. And so it really is a way to collaborate resource management and project management. It isn't a feature that needs to be enabled. So if you don't see it in your environment, you would need to go through support. And there's quite a few internal switches that are needed and been enabled for this to be fully functional. What we do if we do run into environments where it's not enabled, we'll just create a support ticket to basically enable, just request all the settings be enabled with regards to Project Center, and support will be able to enable that for you. There's too many switches to actually mention at this point. But even once it's enabled, a couple of things, it is on and off at a project stage level. So even though it's enabled, you may not see it. So you'll need to make sure it's enabled within the project stage. And then also it is a role permission. So non-admins will need to be given the permission to access and edit the Project Center feature as well. So two additional setup features once OpenAir has supported it. Once it is enabled, though, the main business solver this is doing is really giving you a blended view of the project and the bookings, and one editable screen within the project that is available to be worked on. So we'll talk about some of the features there. Before we get too much into the Project Center, it's important to understand the importance of the project outlines work breakdown structure drives the foundation of the Project Center. The Project Center really sits on your work breakdown structure, your task structure, phases as needed. And it really is important to how you manage the Project Center. So be aware of certain decisions you'll have to make. Like, for example, the Project Center will allow you to do bookings at a task level or at a project level, or you can do either with the Project Center. Turning the Project Center on allows you to update resource booking information using inline editing from within the project. So if project managers are allowed to make those types of changes, this would be a way to give them that permission without having to leave their project or their project plan. You can then add both booking and task and project fields into your view, and they'll become inline editable. So the promise of inline editing at a project task level and booking level comes to fruition inside the Project Center. So we'll talk about some of the fields we've seen that you can benefit from this. And then there is some drag and drop options for extending bookings and other items. So in addition to giving you new business functionality, it also gives you some additional enhancements to the UI and being able to do less clicks to be able to update your tasks. So even if you decide not to use it for its intended use, it may be beneficial to enable it for some of these other values. So, for example, there's a notes field on the project task that I've seen customers use to be able to store additional information. By enabling the Project Center, we can now bring those notes field up into the task view and also inline edit them. So very beneficial option to be able to see and edit those notes without having to drill down into each task to be able to get to that detail. Also, within the project view, you have additional creation options. We can create new new phases, new tasks, new milestones, and you have lots of flexibility there as well. So not only just managing and inline editing your existing objects, you have the ability to create new objects as well. With regards to resource management, again, you have the ability to schedule down to a task level or to a project level without having to open up the booking form or go into the booking module. Again, bringing into effect inline editing, we have the ability to go in and enter bookings. Now, when this was originally released, you could only do this on a weekly basis. Since the last release, they've included now the ability to pivot this on a monthly basis as well, which has been a great add to the tool because a lot of customers are not looking at their bookings at a weekly basis, but more so at a monthly. So adding that option makes, in my opinion, adds this, makes this much more usable to a larger group of audiences. And so by going in, editing the bookings in a monthly or weekly volume, you then get the save button, you can save it and move on. You'll also see that if you're adding different streams of bookings, you'll see multiple lines for the same resource. And so this is common, different bookings, you might have different booking types, built different ways in the list view. So be aware, and there is a way to be able to group the bookings so that they don't appear in multiple lines, and we'll show that in a future slide. But you can come in and add multiple bookings with different characteristics inside of the project center. And another benefit is you don't have to enter it period over period. So whether it's monthly or weekly, you don't have to go in and enter it in each period. Let's say you may want to start off with scheduling a resource for a year at 50% of their capacity, or for so many hours rather. You can go in here and just click. There's 3 dots on the left side of the bookings. Once you go into the center, and then you can create the bookings for resource, start and end date, and enter the hours. I misspoke, percentage is not available today. You are selecting hours, but this will basically peanut butter smear the hours across the periods, and then you can, as reality starts to happen, you can go in and update those hours on a period over period basis. And as I mentioned, that there are different levels of granularity. Again, weekly until this last release, now monthly. Very helpful, in my opinion, in being able to pivot back and forth. There are some things you need to think about, though, when you are doing this. If you're switching durations once they're created and then making modifications, you could get some wonky numbers. So, for example, if you created them monthly, then you break them into weekly, and then you start updating weekly, you could get some odd decimals numbers on your bookings. So be aware of that. For example, if a resource is booked 20 hours a week, you switch to monthly, then modify the booking, it will cause the user to be 20 hours a week for the whole month. So be aware, there's flipping back and forth is generally not worked out very well when. So most customers will say, well, I'm going to look at this weekly, or I'm going to look at this monthly, and go from there. When you do book for a period, it's going to evenly spread those hours from the first day of the period to the last day of the period. So if you're booking monthly, it's going to spread the hours across the entire month, which you would expect the same. It's the same as you would see in a worksheet view within the resource module, or within a booking, a general booking creation option. So be aware, you are going to be spreading those hours evenly. So if I'm booked for 50 hours in July, it will take hours per day from starting on the 1st and going through the 31st for all of the work schedule hours available. A few usability enhancements we saw in the last release. They now give you some ability to do a little bit more of an enhanced date picker. So you can pick, this month, a month ago, project start, project finish, to pivot the periods to which you're viewing the data. You can also highlight the dates you want using a drag and drop within a month to go in and pick the time period you want to see for the booking. So a couple of different ways you can easily manage the dates of the start date and the end date of the views that you're looking at. One other kind of a neat feature that came out of this is the ability to use bookings to actually control your project plan. So for a lot of organizations, they're focusing on the bookings, the booking start date, the booking end date of the resources. If you're booking to a task and you are booking resources, as you would expect, you could actually enable so that the project calculated start and calculated finish dates will actually adhere to the earliest and the latest bookings. So this could be really useful. So you could have a lot of customers, use task structure for capturing time and maybe resource planning, but they're not managing start and end dates. But using this, you could actually be able to really quickly see, okay, what is the bookings of resources impacting for my start and end date of my task? And so it could highlight where you might have a challenge, you may be late on finishing a task. You can still use predecessor relationships here if you like, but obviously you cannot hard code start or finish dates or start or end dates, because that will obviously change the calculated start date, so they'll no longer follow the booking. So something to think about if you are looking at managing those dates with using bookings rather than using manual management. And in order to have that done, there is, in most of the new instances I've seen, this field is available, this calculate project schedule book based on bookings. If you don't see this option, it is a custom field you would just create, and you can find the custom field details in the Suite Answers. This is just an example of what I mean here. So when you are using the bookings, and you can look back to your like in this example, the requirements workshop is using a date of the 11th through the 28th, and that's following the bookings for the 2 resources that are booked to this project. There's some other visibility enhancements that are available. I mentioned grouping, which gives you that ability to be able to see a single line of data per resource. Which can be really helpful, because otherwise it can get kind of a little messy in trying to see all the different summarized bookings at a resource level. That's really nice. And there's also in the last release a lot of enhancements here from the UI, being able to freeze task columns so that you can scroll on either side can be really helpful. Being able to show availability, this is kind of a cool add. So a lot of times I get customers like, okay, I'm moving you out a week because there's a delay. Are you available? I don't know. Well, if you do that, move those hours out, you can now see if you're creating a conflict right here from the screen, and be able to determine if there's a conflict or not. And if there is, obviously you have to go figure that out, but nice to be able to see that here. Also, if you are overbooking resources, you can enable that to be able to be an indicator, a warning indicator, and that can be really helpful too. Also, with this last release, they enhanced the ability to summarize the bookings both at a phase level and at a project level, and those again are under your control. So that adds to the dropdown of being able to turn on or off project level subtotals and phase or task level subtotals. So this is kind of a nice way to be able to see it at an overall project level, and then be able to drill down to each phase and task. This actuals enhancement is also kind of an interesting feature. What this does is when you turn on enhancements, which allows, there's an on-off option, and you can turn it on and off as you go. But basically what it's going to do is it's going to look at the previous period of whatever the today's date is going backwards, depending on if you're looking at this weekly or monthly. And it's going to replace the bookings with the actual time entered. So this could be kind of an interesting view of being able to see, what are my hours they actually spent for previous periods to this point. And what this then gives you the ability to do is OpenAir will now give you out of the box EAC and ETC. So EAC is your estimate at complete. So this is basically your past hours plus your booking hours summed up together. So when this project is complete, as of today, it looks like we're going to spend 628 hours total. In estimate to complete, meaning what is my future booked hours, not including the past? What is it going to take to finish this project and down to a task level? So these become regularly available. You can add these into your views, and it could be very interesting and give you some really good information. When it does include the actuals, it is all worked hours, so it's not filtering by any approvals, archived, or any other, and it will show it per person, per task, if you're going down to a task level. So be aware. And I mentioned the ETC and the EAC, and these are only available when you have that actuals enabled. So turning on the actuals then gives you the ability to see those details inside of the Project Center. This was an enhancement, if I call it out. They've added additional scrolling options inside the Project Center. Before, it was very difficult to scroll, especially when you have large project plans. Now they've enhanced that. So now even if the data is not fully loaded, you don't have full visibility into everything in the project. You can still scroll down all the way through the project plan. So this was another enhancement that came out in the last release. And then there's a usability feature as well that came out in the last release. And basically, as you're scheduling both full-time employees or users and generic users, now there's a difference in the way that the system shows. And so you have this icon for users versus an icon for generics, and allows you to quickly see if you're booked a generic resources versus booking a full user. So some pros and cons, benefits of this. It's really nice to quickly view and edit bookings, also viewing and edit tasks as well, being able to have inline editing. You can, when you do enable this, if you are managing start and end dates, it does give you another place to inline edit start and end dates within the task, in addition to like a work view, a worksheet view, and then also inline editing of other tasks related. You can also inline edit booking fields. We have a customer that has a request booking type and needs a request reason, which is a text field on the booking. You can display that in the Project Center and make it required. So when they do flip to request type, we can automatically require. So form permissions also fit into the Project Center as well. For required fields or hidden fields, depending on what your view is. It does give you that one-stop shop for managing your project as well as managing your resources, which is really could be an efficient way of editing and managing the data. And again, for the most part, it's really good for project managers, and if they're responsible for managing their bookings. I know a lot of times project managers are not managing their bookings, but even if they're not, it does give them the visibility to be able to see their bookings, if they can't even edit them. So again, still, even if I'm not allowed to edit, like confirm bookings, I can still see the data there. So again, very useful. Some things to think about when implementing this. It is a project at a time. So there's not a global project center where you can do any sort of bulk updating across multiple projects. You are updating it one project at a time. You cannot use any sort of booking approvals features with this product. So booking requests or just submitting approval and rejecting bookings cannot be submitted through. Now you could have that enabled outside of this and still see the data here, but you cannot create and submit bookings through the Project Center. And this does not get rid of the need for the resource module. It is still a valuable tool for managing resources, being able to see consolidated views across all projects as well. And reports obviously are also key in being able to see a snapshot of the data at any given point in time. So reports and resource module, still very valuable tools. This is just another way to be able to manage those resource pools. So thank you today for joining. We are Top Step. We are everything open air. I appreciate everyone's loyalty, and I will stop the recording now. And it looks like there's a couple questions.